Our last speaker before our panel discussion, he's a Senior Director, Security Strategy. His name is Mr. Patrick Grillo. He's responsible for creating and evangelizing key messages about Fortinet's network security solutions through his in-depth understanding of its complexities of network security. Mr. Patrick is able to cut through the half-truth and myth surrounding the subject to provide clear and concise information to Fortinet's customers and partners. Let's all give a big round of applause for Mr. Patrick Grillo.
Half-truths and myths. It's a hell of a way to be introduced before telling a story. You'll need to decide for yourselves into which category the story I'm about to tell falls into. But to tell that story, I want to go back in time. I want to go back 20, 25 years, talking about how networks were built. And having come from that world and knowing firsthand, experiencing how the changes happen, seeing how it went from one technology to another, until we finally arrived at something like this about 20, 25 years ago. MPLS, multi-protocol label switching, was a big evolution at the time in the industry. Now you could buy service. You no longer had to buy your own dedicated line. You could build a network running over somebody else's network, don't have to worry about that part of it, and you could build a branch office network. The problem was, just at about this time, something else came into the world, the internet. And so for all your careful planning that you did, how much traffic was I going to generate? How many people would be in the branch offices? Everything got thrown apart because the internet. And as organizations embraced it, that amount of traffic grew exponentially. So the question was, how do we deal with it? And that's the big problem with this model. We size based on certain expectations, but we know more and more applications come into play. And again, at about this same time, we had the introduction of something called voice over IP. So now people were holding video conferencing over Skype. They were doing more and more applications, and more applications means I need more bandwidth. But bandwidth costs money. My budget isn't set for that much money. And if I don't get the bandwidth, my applications start to suffer. And even if I do get the money, it takes a certain amount of time to provision and bring that more bandwidth or that new bandwidth into play. So this was the vicious cycle that we were dealing with for about the last 20 years or so. And don't forget this other thing that was coming in, this idea of a cloud. This was only, yes, it was offering us opportunities, but it was also adding to the problems that I was trying to deal with. So what was it? A brand new solution, the greatest thing that the world has ever seen? SD-WAN. Problem was, it wasn't new. It's not new. The technologies, the principles have been around for a long time as there have been wide area networks. What made it succeed where other attempts have failed? Well, yes, there was a little bit of a technology evolution, this idea of software defined. But more importantly, there was finally a readily available, ubiquitous pool of bandwidth that we could now use to deal with my problems. The internet. As broadband became universally available, DSL, cable, 4G coming into 5G, now I had a real live option that would make a difference. So if I went to my typical SD-WAN environment, this is what I had. I had some mechanism, and I don't care what it is at this point, but that mechanism would now allow me to manage multiple sources of bandwidth to alleviate the problems that I was dealing with. Now, was there a cost savings? There might be. The biggest issue was improving my application performance. And now I could grow as fast as I needed to because I could place an order and have a line installed within 48 hours. So now I'm still back in time about 10 years. And for the networking folks, this was great because now I had something that was stable, something I could rely on. But things don't stay stable and reliable for long. This thing of digital transformation was building up. And like a tsunami, it just is overwhelming and has overwhelmed the industry. Now, what it means to each one of you is different, based on your business, based on your requirements. But what is common about it, I'm embracing technology. I'm embracing any number of technologies to support a strategic business purpose. That's what DX means in this context. The problem is, it's disrupting the thing that I just built because now SD-WAN is not doing what it was originally supposed to do. Or I should say, it shifted its priorities. Because SD-WAN was to deal with bandwidth issues. But now, okay, fine. I've got an internet connection going to each one of my remote sites through some mechanism. And a big part of digital transformation is the use and embracement of cloud technology. Something as simple as Office 365. I could be using any number of different external cloud resources to augment what I'm doing on premise. Perhaps I'm a brand new business and I want to use nothing but cloud. The problem is, by doing this in an SD-WAN environment, we've exposed it as the weakest link in the network. Why? When I was running over MPLS initially, MPLS was somebody else's network. We assumed it was secure. I didn't have to worry about what was going on in the branch office. Yes, I might use a VPN technology to protect my data, but I didn't really need to worry about the network itself. That's somebody else's problem. Now, first of all, I'm connected to the internet. And that problem started as soon as I did that, but gets worse when I bring the cloud aspect in it. And what is the problem? The problem is these DSL connections or internet connections are inherently insecure. Why? All my security is back at the head end. I'm using MPLS. Let somebody else worry about it, but I'll put the appropriate security controls at the head end, not worry about the branch office. So basically, for every one of these internet connections that I have, it's an open door to the hacker, to the cyber criminal, and I'm actually, in an effort to improve the performance in my network, I'm actually decreasing the security posture. Now let's park that on one side. There's another issue that happily has come along, and that's this idea of distributing my security. Instead of putting all at the head end, I recognize I need something at my remote site. So what we've seen, particularly in larger distributed networks, is a move to put security out there. I don't care of the term. I happen to be using a next generation firewall. You can call it UTM. You can call it just a firewall if you like. But that tendency, plus the SD-WAN, the interconnectivity with the internet to these cloud applications, this gives me an opportunity to deal with this encroaching problem. And that is to take my SD-WAN capability and put it in that firewall that I already have at the branch office. And if you talk to our friends at Gardner, this is their preferred method of dealing with this issue. If you have a firewall at the remote site, that's where SD-WAN should be going, not bringing in yet another box, increasing the complexity, and dealing with the issues that come along with that. So this idea, we're shifting slightly from SD-WAN to secure SD-WAN. And what does it mean? First of all, it means I'm not compromising on anything. It's not, well, I take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No. You still have to have full SD-WAN functionality. You still have to have the ability to prioritize applications. You still have to have the ability to route traffic by the best route for that particular application. But on top of that, or with that, that's where you add full-fledged security. What full-fledged security? It depends on your individual requirements. But that you go ahead and enable those capabilities. So whether it's just firewalling, you want more than that, application control, whatever it might be, you now have the capability to enable it and still benefit from all the benefits of SD-WAN. But we're talking about the branch office, and connectivity is only part of it. Yes, I want to connect the office to the network. But if I think about it, as digital transformation is changing fundamentally how we do things, I need to go deeper than just the connectivity. Because if I look at this point, at a boundary, I've taken my SD-WAN enabled firewall, it's providing me my wide area connectivity, it's providing the security features that I would suspect there, or that I would require there, I should say. But what about behind it? The reason we're doing this is because we've enabled the branch office with greater automation, with greater productivity, with tools. Everybody's got a PC. Everybody has a mobile device. When they're in the office, we want to make sure that environment is as secure as possible. And I don't care whether they're connected by a switch, wirelessly, it doesn't make a difference to me. I want to know who's out there, what endpoints are there. So wouldn't it make sense, rather than mix and match multiple vendors to do this, to where the complexity becomes an obstacle to the actual operation of the environment, why not have a single solution? Why not have a security solution doing all of your SD-WAN capability, providing the security on an outbound basis, but also back towards the end users? This is what we call SD-branch. Starting with SD-WAN, but expanding our scope, making sure you're not sacrificing anything by looking at another opportunity. Now this brings up a concept that we've introduced called securing the data journey. And when you're looking at digital transformation, whether you want to call it that or not, you're looking at the technologies that you're embracing for a business reason, not just because it's a cool technology, but because it can make you more agile. It can help you deliver greater service to your customers. It can reduce cost. It can improve productivity, whatever the case may be. But conversely, or ironically, those technologies that you're relying on to achieve those objectives also have security implications. And you must absolutely take into account those considerations before doing anything, rather than reacting to them afterwards. So if I take this scenario, that yes, I've got my SD-WAN, secure SD-WAN enabled branch offices, and that data is going to the data center. But I still have other elements here. Is my data center, from a security perspective, separate from my branch office, completely different? And what about my cloud? That's your data, but now it's going to somebody else's network. And the cloud providers expect you to be responsible for the security of that data. Where the actual transition point is changes on the type of cloud and the provider. But shouldn't you want to have a single, consistent, contiguous security posture across this? Into the data center, into the clouds themselves, regardless of where they are and what they are. To have a consistent set of policy, a consistent set of capability to simplify and enable what you're trying to do. To do that, you need a vision, you need an architecture. And at Fortinet, it's what we call the Fortinet Security Fabric. My colleagues and I are on the show floor. We're at our booth. If any of this has made sense, if you want to dispute it, ask for more information, ask me if this was a truth, a myth, or a half-truth, fine. I welcome you to come to our booth. And at this point, I'll open it up for questions. Thank you very much. Oh, I thought it meant it was perfectly clear. Any questions? This is your last chance. There's a gentleman over here who's trying to trap me. Is the mic on?
No, not okay.
Try it again.
Yes.
Oh, it is working.
Yes. Okay. I'm Maher Jarf, IT Security Manager at SSBS. We have SD-WAN surface in our environment, okay, and applying this security on this firewall, generation firewall. But when you change anything in SD-WAN, the traffic is shifting from one link, from one ISP to another ISP. At this moment, the next generation firewall consumes the CPU and sometimes memory also, but especially for CPU resources. Okay, what's the solution about that? Is this is famous or general in all next generation firewall, or related for some vendors or some settings?
I'm assuming the instance you're talking about, you are not using Fortinet's firewalls. What a guess. It really comes down to, it's not something I normally talk about, but it comes down to the nuts and bolts of the equipment itself. If you're running a software-based firewall that has a fixed processor with a fixed amount of capacity, yes, as you start to add things, SD-WAN, next generation firewall, oh, I want application filtering, I want this on it, performance is going to go down. We address that problem from the hardware. And just very quickly, and I'll be more than happy to go into more detail in the booth, but we have custom developed ASIC technology we use in all of our products to avoid that problem. And so typically, on a cost basis, where it's a comparable cost, we will typically have 5 to 10 times the level of performance of a software-based product. But I invite you to come to the booth and we can go into more detail. Any other questions? If there are no more questions, then oh, wait a minute. I thought I was going to get out easy. Yes.
My question related to the cloud. First, my name is Fathi Saleh. I'm from Abicorp. Nowadays we are thinking to put one of our branch on the cloud. So how can I manage if I have a virtual switch in the cloud? How can I manage it? How I can connect it through Fortinet firewall?
Well, you say put a branch in a cloud.
Yes. I need to build. I need to build this DR on the cloud. So is there?
Okay. You want all the functionality in the cloud itself?
Yes.
Okay.
So how can I connect through the cloud, regardless Microsoft or AWS? Can I connect it through firewall? How can I manage my virtual switch there? Is there any way of connectivity? Plus, considering the security.
Okay.
Thank you.
From a security perspective, everything in an SD-WAN perspective, I should say, everything I've talked about is available in a virtual machine, available in all of the cloud performers. So you can build, let's call it a virtual CPE in the cloud with security provided by Fortinet, whether it be AWS, Microsoft, or any of the other major cloud providers. But again, I invite you to come by our booth and we can talk about it in more detail. Any other questions?
So I think it's time to thank Mr. Grillo for his amazing speech. Let's give a big round of applause.